Hey guys, how's it going? It is 6 a.m. I am in my field accommodations and I'm gonna answer some of the questions you guys had about fieldwork before I go out into the field for a day as a wildlife biologist. So I asked you guys on my Instagram page at Wild Biologist if you have any questions about the field, and I'm going to answer them before my coffee is finished. So this isn't gonna be too long. I gotta get ready for my day, but let's go through some of these questions. What is your main goal when you're out in the field? Georgia 1023 asks. So this totally depends on the type of survey that you're doing. So say you're going out for habitat surveys, your main goal is going to be looking at habitat and recording habitat features that you see out in the field, mapping it, and quantifying the different types of habitats in the field. If you are looking for a species at risk, an endangered species, your goals in the field might be different. They might be to record observations, stand in one point for 15 minutes and like record all bird observations, and if you're finding any species at risk in those observations, maybe it wasn't the best idea to do this at 6 a.m. in the morning. But that's what it comes down to basically, is you really want to think about the type of surveys you'll be doing, and then that's going to define your goals. Science is a huge broad field, so you could have endless number of goals basically when you're out there. Dilly Willy 88 asks, I've had to take surveys for class and they were super boring, like standing in one spot for an hour taking notes, then doing the same thing again and again. Is there more walking in your field work? Not necessarily. There can be, but like standing in one spot for an hour taking notes is honestly like, that sounds really nice compared to some of the stuff that I do, like on an open boat in the pouring rain for like 12 hours, being whipped by cold wind in like the north. So it's definitely not glamorous. Sometimes you'll have those beauty days where it's just sunshine and rainbows all day and you're moving around seeing lots of wildlife, but honestly there's just as many days that are quite brutal weather and standing around not seeing anything interesting. So that's kind of the reality of being in the field. A close call of sorts that you've had in the field by Jacob Zegar. Oh my god, there's been a lot. I mean, I've been bitten by cougars. Like I have, which arm was it? I have a scar from that when I was working with rescued cougars, but I also have fallen out of off-road vehicles, which was pretty scary because people died that way. And let's see what else. I've been really cold. Felt like I was gonna die yesterday. I was so cold. I'm sure there's more than that. I mean, I've ran into wildlife all the time, but I don't know. I don't get that scared by wildlife, to be honest. Like, most of the time they just leave you alone. I think that a lot of people get way more scared seeing wolves and bears than I do. That's not to say you shouldn't be fearful, but like when I see a bear, give it its space, back away, and I've never had any issues or had any aggressive wildlife, really, anything like that. So besides wildlife I've worked with in rehabilitation centers, that's a different beast because you're literally like hands-on interacting with them. But in the wild, I haven't had too many close wildlife calls. It's more like logistics calls. And I did have a scary story from when I was backpacking. I'll link to that video above. That was scary. People sometimes are the scariest part about being in the wild. What are your favorite brands for field attire? Alana Garg 44 asks. I'm not super brand specific. At the beginning of the field, when I started in the field, I got a lot of clothes at the thrift store, but I found that like for really lightweight pants, I like my Prana and Columbia pants for field work. I like my Arc'teryx rain pants. For heavier, like thick, more canvasy feeling pants, I have like 511 tactical pants. There's a number of places you can get base layers, whether they're like wool ones or polyester ones. You can get them from like a sporting goods store. I'm not super specific, but I found pants are the hardest thing, so that's why I wanted to mention the pants. Giovanni Caputo asks, are you exhausted after a day out in the field? Almost always. Like, I don't know, I always have in my mind like, you'll rest when you're dead, which is not a good way to look out of your life. But like, I honestly get so tired, I have to go into my happy place sometimes. But you know, when I'm sitting around like during quarantine, I just dream of days that I'm back out in the field, so I know all the exhaustion is worth it in the long run. Vaish Ramesh asks how to get into wildlife research without conventional training. So being a biologist, being a wildlife biologist isn't the only way to get into the field. There are some non-biologist field opportunities, and when it comes to wildlife research though, academia in general is just it's really important like to get that formal training. But I would say some of the ways to get wildlife research experience without having formal training is, one, if you are a member of an indigenous community that's going on like wildlife research trips as a cultural monitor, a lot of times you don't have to get your degree program for that, or you don't have to get your degree for that. This is a hard question because so much of it does, in wildlife specifically, depend on having your degree. But if you want to just get into the field in general, there are some field jobs that don't require a bachelor's degree, and I have talked about them in a video that I will link to above. Mental routine for preparing to go out in the field, Skellington Adventures asks. This is an interesting question, mental routine. I think that it would probably be a good idea to have one, but I just try to get a lot of sleep. I try to sleep a lot when I'm in the field. I slept for like 9 hours last night. And another thing that helps me when I'm in the field is like I was talking about this when bad weather is, like being able to just like, you know, I'm freezing cold, I'm sitting there, I'm tired, and just to be able to like move out of my body and just like daydream, you know, when I'm like just really need like a dose of like happiness and warmth, I just think about like a vacation or like a happy place somewhere, and that always really helps me too. Yeah, those are some of the mental things that I do. I'm sure there's more you could do. Fieldwork during a pandemic. How to even do anything when limited by the pandemic, by Kristina. I mean, that's a great question. I was not doing fieldwork during the pandemic for a while. Now I'm only doing emergency fieldwork. So yeah, it's really hard to do that. But you know, I think taking proper COVID precautions, like get everyone in the field before they go out in the field getting tested for COVID, wearing masks the whole time, social distancing the whole time, working outside, really helps mitigate some of the risks for field work. Also having separate rooms for accommodation, separate kitchens are some other things that at least I've done to mitigate my exposure and exposing others during the pandemic. Can you get into bird fieldwork without appropriate education? By Biodiversity Vancouver Island. So if you have a lot of experience with birding, you can try to get a job at like a bird banding station, especially if you know how to do that already, volunteered with them. And some of the like smaller bird research organizations, sometimes they will hire like technicians for jobs. You know, they're not going to be the highest level of responsibility usually at those like field stations, but sometimes you can get a technician job if you just know birds really well, because honestly, if you know birds really well, you're probably better off than a bunch of university graduates anyway if they don't learn about birds in their undergrads. So I think that hands-on experience might be really good for working at a research station at like a technician level. Your craziest or most creative field fix or solution on the go, also by Jacob Zigar. Yeah, probably just yesterday actually my glasses broke and I had to get my boat captain to like get electrical tape and like wrap it around like the hinges of my glasses because they like completely snapped off and I wouldn't be able to drive home without it. So that one was a pretty creative one. That was literally just yesterday, so I was thinking ahead. Your favorite after work fieldwork treat? I like chocolate, like dark chocolate, vegan dark chocolate. 10 things you wish you knew about fieldwork before starting by Nostalgic Banju. I'm not gonna do 10 because that's gonna take a while, but I guess the thing I wish I knew about fieldwork before I started was that I wish I advocated for myself more, and I wish I knew that people would be kind of, I don't know, like the interpersonal side of things, like working with people, social skills. I thought I was gonna be like in the wild alone most of the time, but honestly, like do need to have pretty good social skills to be in the field and like avoid conflict. So yeah, I wish I knew that ahead of time and prepared for that. Angeli Polly asks, do you have an accommodation or do you usually camp in the field? I usually have an accommodation, though I have camped before. Most of the time I have a camp, a field station, floating cabins, something like that we stay in, or a hotel. I don't usually camp, not since I was working in the Amazon, really have I been camping too much, which is, it's not out of the question. Like I'm like, I could, but most of the time there's a way to transport you to your field sites from the closest accommodation. Meg Mac asks, did you find student field positions over the summers while in uni, and should I? So I found field positions over the summer. They weren't necessarily just student ones. They were just like seasonal, like technician type of jobs. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you try to do that during university if you can. Ellis Bugoff asks, how often do you have field work? So during the pandemic, I actually have only been on the field a few times this year. But before that, I was out every 2 months, I would say, maybe. I used to be out much more. I used to be out almost the entire time, but it was like a conscious choice to try to spend more time at home. So now I spend a week in the field every few months or so. What advice do you give to people interested in field work, and what's the first step? By Amanda Shafkali. The advice I give to people who want to do field work is to get some experience doing field work, or some experience just in the bush in general. So for me, I've always been a backpacker, so it really was nothing new. I guess when I was going into the field, I'd already experienced that, but I've seen a lot of people who have not had that background experience, you know, camping, fishing, hiking, something like that. So I would recommend trying to get that to see if you even want to be out here, because if you spent most of your life not outside and then suddenly you're working in the field for 12-hour days, you really can't know if you're gonna like it until you do it. So I recommend that you get some of that, and then when you get into university, getting some of those seasonal field jobs to try to get some experience before, you know, getting a permanent job in the field. Maya Hodder asks, what's the ratio of working in the field to doing data analysis / computer stuff? This is commonly a misunderstood one, I think. I think most of the time I'm doing data analysis and less time in the field, unless I'm working as a field technician and someone else is doing the data analysis. But most of the time, like, biologists spend way more time working on the computer than they do in the field, like I said, unless they have like a field tech job and they're handing off their data for someone else to analyze. How to find field work opportunities? Who asked that one? Wanderlust Novice. So the best ways to find fieldwork opportunities are, if you're in university, checking out through your professors. You can ask your professors if any of their lab group members have any research opportunities that you could help out on. You can also find fieldwork opportunities on job search websites, LinkedIn, Ornithology Exchange, Texas A&M Job Board. The last two are quite US focused, but can have international opportunities. Indeed can have that stuff. There's a number of like the Wildlife Society job boards. You can find postings. You can also find them through like organizations' websites specifically. And a lot of times the postings will actually be quite internal, as in you have to know someone who knows someone to get in. So also networking can help find field research opportunities. But if you're still in school, definitely use your university to your fullest advantage to try to find those research opportunities through your university, because sometimes those can be the easiest ones to get when you're still in school. So I gotta go. I already ran like way over time. I gotta have coffee, have lunch, get ready, get my equipment ready. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope that answered some of your questions about the field. Now I'm gonna go out into the field, and I hope you guys have a good day. We'll see you next time. Bye.